Okay, dear students, good morning, all of you. Today we are going to start a new lesson. The name of the lesson is the birth from your supplementary reader, that is the snapshot. Okay, so let's begin, dear students. So I hope you are able to see the lesson birth, and which is a part of your snapshot by A.J. Cronin. Okay, by A.J. Cronin. Okay. So Ashutosh, please confirm me once if I am audible loud and clear to you. Good morning Bhagasri and others. Good morning all of you. Kindly confirm with the text if I am audible loud and clear to you, so that I can straightaway begin my lesson. Okay, thank you Shraddha, thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, Uday, thank you. Okay, see here in this excerpt from the Citadel. So this story, dear student, is an example of excerpt. Excerpt. What is excerpt, dear students? Do you know what is an excerpt? Excerpt means it is a part. It is a small part of a big story. That is what is called excerpt. Okay, so the story birth is a small part taken from a big story, which is called the Citadel. That is why it is called excerpt. Excerpt means this part of the story which you get in our book today is a small part of a big book called the Citadel. So that is why in this excerpt from the Citadel, Andrew Manson, he is the character, okay, main character. He is a doctor, newly out of medical school, has just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in the small Wells mining town of Blanelly. Okay, so as you can see here, Andrew Manson, he is newly out of medical school and he had just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in the small Wells mining town of Blanelly. Okay, so the doctor is from a very small Wells mining town of Blanelly. As he is returning from a disappointing evening with Christine. Christine is the girl whom he loves. Okay, doctor's girlfriend, whose name is Christine. He is met by Joe Morgan. So once when he was returning home from the doctor, Andrew, when Dr. Andrew was returning from a disappointing evening with his girlfriend Christine, he comes across a person called Joe Morgan. Who is Joe Morgan? Joe Morgan is a miner actually, okay, very ordinary person. Joe and his wife, who have been married nearly 20 years, are expecting their first child. Okay, so this particular childbirth is very important. Okay, because they have been married for the last 20 years, but expecting their first child now. Therefore, you can imagine how important is the help of Dr. Andrew to Mr. and Mrs. Morgan. So, dear students, we got several characters. The most important character, or you can say the protagonist of this story, is Dr. Andrew Manson. Okay, Dr. Andrew Manson is the protagonist of this story, or the most important character of this story, who had just come out of his medical school, means who has just qualified as a doctor, okay, as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page, okay. So he is the most important character, he is the protagonist of the story. What is his name? His name is Dr. Andrew Manson. Okay, next character who is important is Mr. Joe Morgan. Okay, Joe Morgan is a character introduced in this story besides Dr. Andrew, and the rest are all passing characters. They are not so important. You'll find a nurse and all that. So the main character or the protagonist is only Dr. Andrew Manson. So dear students, what we are going to learn from this lesson, let me tell you something about the theme of this particular story. So this story highlights the commitment and dedication of a promising doctor. Okay, promising doctor. It is said that, or the writer wants to communicate through this story that every doctor should be like Dr. Andrew Manson, who is very much committed, self-sacrificing, and very you can say kind to the patient. Okay, so every doctor should be like Dr. Andrew Manson. Dr. Andrew Manson is the role model for the modern doctors. If we compare the modern doctors with Dr. Andrew Manson, we find a hell of a difference. We find this, huge difference, yawning difference between Dr. Andrew Manson and the doctors who are practicing present day. Okay, because Dr. Andrew Manson, on the other hand, is very professionally committed, who is very loyal, who is very patient with the patient, and who is having lot of kindness, as against the modern doctors who are very professional, who are less committed, who are more money oriented, who are not so much loyal to their patients, who are loyal to the nursing home, or who are loyal to the hospital where they work. Okay, not to the patient, but to their employer. Okay, so nowadays things have changed. Of course, there are several doctors who are really very committed, who are very much sacrificing in nature, but the percentage is very small. The percentage of doctors who are like Dr. Andrew Manson is very poor. The percentage is very poor, and exception doesn't come under discussion. Therefore, it is a contrast. Dr. Andrew Manson's commitment, professional commitment, loyalty, sacrificing nature, and patience has been compared to the present day doctors. Present day doctors will stay nowhere in terms of professional commitment, loyalty, okay, that Dr. Andrew Manson has shown in this story. So let's find out, dear students, let's find out in the course of our reading. Though it was nearly midnight when Andrew reached Byrongar, he found Joe Morgan waiting for him, walking up and down with short steps between the closed surgery and the entrance to the house. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Expressed relief. At the sight of him. At the sight of him means at the very sight. At the very sight of Andrew Mason, the burly driller's face expressed relief. He was working. It's a mining town, so they were miners. Mr. Morgan, what's his name, dear students? Yes, Joe Morgan. So Mr. Joe was very happy when he could catch a glimpse of Dr. Dr. Andrew Manson. Okay, so at the sight of him, the burly drillers. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Okay, it expressed relief because Andrew Manson has just reported, "Hey doctor, I'm glad to see you. I've been back and forward here this last hour. The Mrs. wants you before time too." Okay, so this is a kind of a local English. That is why it's like that is spoken English local. Whenever the uneducated people speak any kind of language, they do not speak the refined language. They speak the kind of a unpolished language. Okay, so this is the example of unpolished language on the part of Joe Morgan. Okay, who has been saying the Mrs. matlab the Mrs. wants you before time too. Okay, so when he caught sight of, when he could see Dr. Andrew approaching, he became very happy, Mr. Joe Morgan, and he came up to the doctor and said, "Hey doctor, I'm very glad to see you. Okay, I've been back and forward, means I have been pacing up and down in this place for the last hour, and my missus also wants you before the delivery time," he means to say. Andrew abruptly recalled from the contemplation of his own affairs, told Morgan to wait. Okay, so dear students, Andrew was already preoccupied with the bad relation that he, or kind of a bad interaction, kind of a quarrel that he was having with his girlfriend. So he was already contemplating, he was already thinking about that matter when Joe Morgan approached him and was expressing his relief in front of him. Therefore, it took some time for Dr. Andrew to come back to the realistic phase. Okay, therefore he told Joe Morgan to wait for a while before he comes up. So Andrew abruptly recalled from the contemplation of his own affairs, told Morgan to wait. He went into the house for his bag. Then together they set out for number 12 Blaina Terrace. The night air was cool and deep with quiet mystery. Usually so perceptive, Andrew now felt dull and listless. He had no premonition that this night call would prove unusual, still less that it would influence his whole future in Blanelli. Okay, so dear students, these lines are very important. Why? Because these are very these lines, this particular line talk about something important, some important phase in the medical career of Dr. Andrew Manson. Okay, so Andrew Manson did not have any premonition. Premonition means what, dear students? Premonition means idea from before. Okay, he could not guess from before. He did not have any idea from before that this night call, he was having night duty, might be, this night call would prove unusual. Why? Because medical profession, every new patient will throw challenge in front of you everyday basis. If you are not an expert, if you are not able to handle the patients then you are considered to be a failure. Okay, to be failure. Therefore, that night he did not have any idea from premonition, means did not have any idea from before, that this night call would prove to be unusual for him. Still less that it would influence, still less that means he was still less aware of the fact that it would influence his whole future in Blanelli. Means his treatment or his dealing with the patient. Who is the patient here? Mrs. Morgan. He is dealing with the patient Mrs. Morgan, would influence his whole future in a mining town called Blanelli. He had no idea from before that this case of Mrs. Morgan is going to be a very challenging case for him, and secondly, that this particular case or this particular treatment of the Mrs. Morgan is going to be going to influence his career, the whole future in the mining town of Blanelli. The two men walked in silence until they reached the door of number 12. Then Joe drew up short. Joe drew up short. "I'll not come in," he said, and his voice showed signs of strain. "But man, I know you will do well for us." Okay, and then it seems that Dr. Andrew has lot of reputation from before also. That is why here Joe Morgan is saying, "Man, I know that you shall do well for both of us." Okay, means you shall do justice to your treatment. So this is how Joe stops here and allows Andrew to go inside. Let's find out here. Okay, Uday, I am zooming it for you. So you can see here now. I have zoomed it. Inside, a narrow stair led up to a small bedroom, clean but poorly furnished, and lit only by an oil lamp. Okay, lit only by an oil lamp inside. Here, Mrs. Morgan's mother, a tall grey-haired woman of nearly 70, and the stout elderly midwife waited beside the patient, watching Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. "Let me make you a cup of tea, Dr. Back," said the former quickly after a few moments. So who is that? Mrs. Morgan's mom. So Mrs. Morgan's mother sort of came up with a proposal to offer tea to Dr. Andrew. Okay, but Dr. Andrew refused it right now because the case is serious. He has to deal with it quickly. Andrew smiled faintly. He saw that the old woman, wise in experience, realized there must be a period of waiting, that she was afraid he would leave the case, saying he would return later. "Don't fret, mother. I will not run away." Okay, I shall not run away, so you don't feel angry. Down in the kitchen, he drank the tea which she gave him. Okay, it means he has taken, Dr. Andrew has taken the tea that Mrs. Morgan's mother has provided him. Overwrought means he was very tired. Okay, he was very tired. Overwrought as he was, he knew he could not snatch even an hour's sleep if he went home. So if he went home, he would not be able to snatch even an hour's sleep. Okay, because he has another patient, therefore it doesn't make sense to go home and sleep for just 1 hour, okay, it will further deteriorate his condition. Therefore he decided not to go. He knew too that the case here would demand all his attention. The case here would demand all his attention. Therefore he decided to stay back. A queer lethargy of spirit came upon him. He decided to remain until everything was over, okay. Even though he became lethargic, but still he decided to remain in the hospital till he finishes his work, okay. An hour later he went upstairs again, noted the progress made, came down once more, sat by the kitchen fire. It was still, except for the rustle of a cinder in the grate and the slow tick-tock of the wall clock. No, there was another sound, the beat of Morgan's footsteps as he paced in the street outside. So Mr. Joe Morgan was pacing backward and forward in the street outside because it's sort of a anxiety moment for him, because his wife is going to give birth to a child. Therefore he was pacing up and down in the street. The old woman opposite him sat in her black dress, quite motionless, her eyes strangely alive and wise, probing, never leaving his face, okay. His thoughts were heavy, muddled. The episode he had witnessed at Cardiff station still obsessed him morbidly. The episode he had witnessed means he is referring to his interaction, his bad experience with his girlfriend Christine, okay. So this particular episode keeps coming to his mind time and again. The episode he had witnessed at Cardiff station still obsessed him morbidly. He thought of Bramwell, foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him sordidly. He was thinking of some stories, okay, thinking of some failure in love stories, okay, because he has become a bit negative with his girlfriend Christine. Therefore all the stories of love, failures in love kept coming in his mind. He thought of Bramwell, another person foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him. Deceived means who cheated him sordidly. He was also reminded of Edward Page, bound to the Swedish Blodden of Danny, living unhappy apart from his wife, okay. So all these negative instances of failures in love kept coming to his mind as he had a similar experience, a very negative experience with his girlfriend Christine. His reason told him that all these marriages were dismal failures, okay. It was a conclusion which in his present state made him wince. So all the marriages were dismal failures. He became very negative, dear students. Why? Because he had a negative experience with Christine. Therefore he became a bit negative for the time being, and he is thinking negative about all the romantic relationship, okay, about marriages, about love, etc. It was a conclusion, okay. He wished to consider marriage as an idyllic state. Yes, he could not otherwise consider it with the image of Christine before him, okay. You can see here, dear students, you can see here, he says that a kind of a state, it's something which doesn't make any progress, okay. He wished to consider marriage as an idyllic state. He could not otherwise consider it with the image of Christine before it. Her eyes shining towards him admitted no other conclusion, okay. Christine is in front of him, okay. Therefore he is thinking about all this, and now that he has some bad experience with Christine, therefore all these negative thoughts kept coming. But otherwise he doesn't have any negative thought about Christine. He was going great with her, okay. It was the conflict between his level, doubting his mind, and his overflowing heart which left him resentful and confused, okay. It was the conflict between his level, doubting mind, and his overflowing heart which left him resentful and confused. Overflowing heart means he was disturbed. He became very much carried out with emotion. Okay, he became carried away with emotion. Okay, carried away with emotion. That is why it's his mind is overflowing heart, which left him resentful, angry, and confused. Okay, whether his relation with Christian becomes successful is something that he is thinking because of the negative experience that he had this evening with Christian. He let his chin sink upon his chest, stretched out his legs, stared broodingly into the fire. He remained like this so long, and his thoughts were so filled with Christine. Okay, so immediately he did not start treatment of Mrs. Morgan. Okay, because his mind was very much disturbed. It was occupied with Christine. Therefore, he did not immediately start his treatment of Mrs. Morgan. Okay, let's find out. He remained like this so long. What like this? He let his chin sink upon his chest. He stretched out his leg, and he started brooding. Brooding means thinking deep into the fire, in front of fire. It was a winter night. That's why he was sitting near the fire, and he was thinking about Christine. He remained in this position for so long, and his thoughts were so filled with Christine that he started when the old woman opposite suddenly addressed him. Okay, and then he was distracted from his thought by an old woman who sat opposite to him. Her meditation had pursued a different course. Okay, let's find out what kind of a course. Her meditation had pursued a different course. Susan said not to give her the chloroform if it would harm the baby. Okay, so this woman who is opposite to her is Mrs. Morgan's mother. She has reminded Dr. Andrew now by saying that Susan said not to give her the chloroform if it would harm the baby. Susan means Mrs. Morgan here. She is awful set upon this child. Dr. Back, her old eyes warmed at a sudden thought. She added in a low tone, "Hey, we all are, I fancy." Okay. We all are means we are also expecting our first baby very, very eagerly. That is why she said, we all are. We all are. Our eyes are set upon this child. Okay. Therefore, we are so much concerned. He collected himself with an effort, and then he came back to reality, and now he would gradually start treating the patient. Okay. Because all this time, even though he was physically present, but he was mentally, his thoughts were with Christine. Therefore, he was sunk in her thought and near the fire until Mrs. Morgan's mother drew his attention towards something, towards the baby. It won't do any harm. It won't do any harm. The anesthetic, he said kindly, they will be all right. Okay, anesthesia won't do any harm, you don't worry. This is what Andrew says to that lady. Okay, which lady? Mrs. Morgan's mother. Here the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew glanced at the clock, which now showed 3:30. He rose and went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work. Here, the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew glanced at the clock, which now showed 3:30. 3:30 means already 3:30 in the morning. He rose and went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work, and he thought, now let me begin my work. Okay. An hour elapsed. It was a long, hard struggle. For the last 1 hour, Andrew Morgan sorry, Andrew, something his name, no? Andrew Mason or something. He was for the last 1 hour he had been struggling with the patient. He had been struggling with the patient for the last 1 hour. Then, as the first streaks of dawn strayed past the broken edges of the blind, the child was born lifeless. The child, dear students, appeared to be born lifeless. Apparently appeared to be born lifeless. Okay, you might have heard about the stillborn baby. So the baby was born, but the baby appeared to be a lifeless baby. Okay, it's not responding, the baby is not responding. So we shall find out whether it's really a lifeless baby or it is not responding at the moment. We shall find it out in our next lecture, dear students. An hour elapsed for the last 1 hour. It was a very hard struggle for Dr. Andrew, okay, who was struggling with the lady to facilitate a smooth delivery of the child. Okay, and then as the first streaks of dawn, then when the morning light began to come out gradually, okay, past the broken edges of the blind, okay, blind matlab window shade is there, na? There is a blind is there, na? Like screen, window screen. So behind that the light is coming, or light can be seen outside. At that time the child was born lifeless. Okay, child apparently appeared to appeared to be born lifeless. So we shall find out whether it's a really lifeless child or what in our next lecture, dear students. Okay. Okay, so that's all about today, dear students. We shall continue our lesson on the next class, and I'm making some worksheet for you from simple, complex, and compound sentences. As and when I finish it, I shall discuss in the live class one day in terms of quiz, so that your concept also becomes clear. Okay. So thank you, dear students. Thank you, Sadvika, Saiba, Swati, Annam, Suhani, Arya. Thank you so much, all of you. Mayur, thank you so much, dear students. Thank you very much. And